His first interview as he arrived in Davos with the NEC director, Kevin Hassett. Thank you so much for joining Bloomberg
Great to be
TV.
here. Yeah.
We're so excited to have you. There's been such a debate here at Davos from corporate America, even CEOs around the world, how the American economy is doing. A lot of people want to invest there. But then you talk to some European leaders, and they feel like there's an existential threat when it comes to some of the rhetoric we heard about Greenland. I know the president tempered some of that in his speech. Are you worried, though, about any pushback? European consumers saying boycotting American products.
Well, what's going on, right, and the president mentioned this in his speech, is that the U.S. economy is booming. If you take the revisions to the source data, I think we might be looking at 2 GDP quarters north of 5% after we're said and done. And at the same time, everybody said that the tariffs would cause inflation and cause a recession in the U.S. and be especially bad for the countries that we make trade deals with. And that, as you know, and you cover every day on Bloomberg, the places that we've made deals with have actually had some of their best stock market years ever. And so the point is that President Trump is disrupting an order that needs to be disrupted, and I think that markets are celebrating because of that.
Do you think that tariff uncertainty, though, we got a whiff of Liberation Day this week because of what was going on with Greenland, do you think we are past the most peak moment of tariff uncertainty for financial markets, for consumers, and for other countries?
Well, I think the tariffs have surprised a lot of mainstream economists. I used to be one of those guys, at least on the tariff front, where I've been surprised, especially.
Now you're a true believer.
It's just astonishing that everything that's in the models that we were taught when I was in grad school just turned out not to be true. And we have, I think, a strong understanding economically of why that is. It's basically that if we have a trade deficit with China forever and ever, then by definition, they're basically dumping into the U.S. with inelastic supply. And so if we put a tariff on them, then they bear the tariff. And the same thing is true for Europe. If we have a big trade deficit with them for a long time, then they basically cut their prices in order to maintain market share in the U.S. And I think the question is, the interesting question that I've been puzzling over and talking to some of my mainstream economist friends is, why is this so positively disruptive? Has President Trump's agenda been so positively disruptive for Europe? And I think that one of the things is that he's made them lift their game in terms of restoring the global order by increasing defense spending. But also, remember, it used to be that we were always talking about zombie companies in Europe. We've kind of stopped doing that, haven't we? And I kind of wonder if the competition that's created by the tariff and the tariff uncertainty hasn't been a real shot in the arm for the European economy.
We've heard a lot of people on Bloomberg talk about that. Actually, what Trump is pushing Europe to do is to do what's good for them.
Right.
But are you concerned about any of these unintended consequences? We saw Spain go over and have a very cozy relationship with China last year. Prime Minister Mark Carney just went over to China. Then he came here to Davos and talked about how the world order that we know is dead. And if you are a middle country and you're at the table, you're going to get eaten. Is there potentially this consequence where we push our allies closer to China, which is the U.S.'s biggest adversary?
No, I don't think that's happening at all. And I think that what is happening is that people are learning, indeed the people here at Davos, that's one reason why we're here to spread the news, is that we've got all this analysis that says that Trump's plan is working. It's working both for the U.S. economy and for the global economy. And I think that people in the end, they look at their wallets, they see how it's going. And in the United States, they're going to see a couple quarters of 5% growth and booming markets, booming wages. And if they see that everywhere else, then I think that it'll have a big political effect. I think the people who make the most noise attacking President Trump aren't necessarily speaking for their countries. They're speaking for their very, very liberal policies. You've seen President Trump call some of them out in the last few days.
Are you concerned, though, a little bit about a tightening of financial conditions, bond yields rising, which we did see this week?
There is a little bit of wiggling, but the bottom line is that in the end, the bond yield really depends on what's going on for the U.S. with the deficit. And we've reduced the deficit by about $600 billion year over year. And we expect that we'll do more next year. And we've done it with real stuff, not smoke and mirrors. For example, cutting government employment by 270,000 workers. And so I think that the bond markets are going to look at that and they're going to feel pretty secure in investing in U.S. debt. And Secretary Bessent is really the best debt salesman I've ever seen, too.
And he's always focused on where the 10-year Treasury yield is. He wants it at 3%. We're not there.
We're not there yet.
Not there yet. When it comes to tightening of financial conditions, though, a lot of talk also at the sidelines of Davos and has been for weeks is what's going on with the Fed. One CEO told me today that it's counterproductive if you have these concerns about Fed independence because it means we actually might get tighter financial conditions. Jay Powell was there, present at Lisa Cook's hearing today at the Supreme Court. What do you make of a more assertive Fed chair, Powell?
Well, I think that again, as you recall, that I was a young economist at the Fed a long time ago, and I worked with Alan Greenspan, and he was really, really careful about keeping the Fed out of politics and keeping the Fed focused on monetary policy and interest rates and the dual mandate. And even to one point, I wrote an academic paper, that he refused to publish for the Fed for over a year because it was about carbon taxes and BTU taxes, and he didn't want the Fed to get involved in that fight with Al Gore and Bill Clinton while it was still going on. And so I think that, really regrettably, the bank presidents and the Federal Reserve members seem to want to have an opinion about everything every day, not just monetary policy. So, for example, you could go in, and right after President Trump took office, Austin Goolsbee gave a speech where he said, well, economists all agree that if there's a tariff, that it doesn't have an effect on inflation, it just affects the price level. But he said, here's why you shouldn't think about it that way. And I think that that's actually going into a politically dangerous place for the Fed. I mean, for sure you want to talk about inflation, but precisely then, right when President Trump's coming in and setting his tariff agenda, to have the Fed criticize him so vehemently, I think is inconsistent with the desire for independence.
Do you think it was appropriate that Jay Powell went to the Supreme Court today?
I do not.
No. When it comes to the Fed process, of course, your name is in the mix. Have you heard any more about the process? Because the president said we've learned today that he will be making announcements soon. It sounds like next week, potentially.
I don't know if the announcement's next week. You saw what he said. It was very sweet of him to mention that he wants me to stay. I think that we haven't finalized at the White House what's going to happen, but we're really thrilled that there's so many good candidates. And I think that the fact of whether I stay or do something else, whether he decides for me to stay, is really related to the fact that because he did such a good job recruiting a great White House team led by Susie Wiles, that this White House is really running on all cylinders. And part of it is because so many really great people joined the National Economic Council. And so I think that he's a little bit wary of breaking that up.
We spoke to Senator Tom Tillis today. Of course, you know him, senior member of the Banking Committee. He said it's not about the person, it's about the process. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't want to go ahead with the process of the new Fed chair until all the drama with the Powell subpoena is tied up. And he says he's still going to be there for another 347 days until his retirement. So how long do you think this will take?
Well, he's an old friend, and I have very high regard for him. And I understand that the subpoena is a challenge for some to think logically about, well, is it legit, and so on. But what we need to do is sit back and look at the evidence. The fact is that the overruns at the Fed are so humongous that it's right for us to investigate, well, where did they come from? Was somebody profiting from it, and so on. And I don't think that we've been super happy with the transparency of the Fed on these matters, and it's unfortunate that a subpoena might be required for them to just own up to what they've been doing. But I really expect that things are going to move quickly because everybody wants this resolved as fast as possible.
I know you're a friend of Senator Tillis, and by the way, he's here, so maybe you'll get an opportunity to see him walking around. He's very popular right now in the Congress Center. Have you had an outreach with him directly about this process?
No, I've not had an outreach about the Fed process with anyone other than the president.
Has the president, you think, spoken to Senator Tillis?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Because he is this key person, and he potentially may hold up the president's pick. Are you prepared for Jay Powell being the chair of the Fed for the rest of the year, potentially?
I don't think anyone expects that in the end the president's nominee will have any trouble at all.
I want to end just on the midterm elections. For me, it feels like the president's North Star this year is November 3rd, midterm elections. We heard more about affordability today, but a lot more about foreign policy. When do you think he's really going to start to flesh out more about, will we potentially see a credit card cap? Will we see more when it comes to the housing market? Is there going to be sort of ban with the defense sector buying having stock buybacks or dividends?
Well, one of the things you saw in the speech was that there are a lot of foreshadowing events that he suggested were coming soon, including a big housing policy announcement. And I think that, for sure, the economic agenda is really ambitious for the year ahead, and I think that you'll see more of it in the State of the Union. It's something that we've been working really hard on.
So in February, do you think the administration is prepared to call for something, say a housing emergency, before the midterm elections?
I don't know if someone would call it an emergency, but I do know that it's really, really terrible what so many people are going through, because the typical down payment in the U.S. because of Joe Biden's inflation has about doubled. So you take takes about $34,000 to get into the typical home right now, and who has that kind of money? And so we see that people aren't buying a new house until they're like 40, and that's just unacceptable to the president. And we've got a whole bunch of policies in line to make housing more affordable, which is a big part of making life more affordable. If you think about how much of the budget that you spend every month is about your house, if we can get that down, then we can really have a big effect. And we have actually already this year because mortgage rates have come down.
Davos, for a lot of people in the Trump administration, has said to me, this is a place for global elite. As we end here, what do you think the one message the president should make to Americans on why he should be at this event in Davos, Switzerland, one of the hardest places to get to in the world, as you know?
Yes, it was kind of hard to get here, but I can tell you that President Trump believes that he can help the world understand the effectiveness and success of his policies. And this is a place where a lot of people who have advocated pretty awful policies for their countries have been kind of increasing in sanctimony as they've declined in wisdom. And we're here to set the record straight with hard data so people can see what it takes to have a great, wonderful economy. And we hope that every country that's here and everybody represented here listens.